our universe, our world is through language, right? We understand through language. And so the wording, the specifics of the words that we use make a big difference in our understanding.
We are live, my love.
Ooh, well, I'm excited.
This is the first time we podcast together?
This is...
I mean, it with
Kevin last week just interviewed us, but yeah, this is...
First time you and I alone podcast.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Are you stoked?
Of course I'm stoked.
Yay.
Yeah.
Good.
We'll do more.
Yeah, we will.
We'll do lots more. Maybe we should start a couples podcast or something one day.
You know, that was the first thing that I thought of, because I feel like you and I exemplify a really interesting dynamic in our relationship, especially because of the situation and circumstance and containers that we put ourselves in, being entrepreneurs and building a movement and running crazy events and whatnot. And so, yeah, I feel like that could bring a lot of juicy goodness to the world.
Juicy goodness. That's what the world needs more of. Juicy goodness.
I agree. So what I was thinking about, speaking about today, was just what's emerged. You know, right now we're sitting in Costa Rica at Envision Festival, exhausted and hot AF. and yet there's been so much magic. Like, we just got out of the mastermind, a mentorship, a certification program. Now we're here at Envision running the camp. And a massive theme that has come out is this polarity of dark and light and shadow and light, and really playing with those two different poles. I wanted to dive into that and look at the shadow side, as well as the beauty and the magic of running an event like this and leading a movement like this. So talking to let's start off with some of the darkness, because, you know, through alchemy and transmutation, first it's observation, going down into deconstruction, and then reemergence. And so let's chat about what do you find some of the biggest challenges or some of the obstacles that we face in creating this and in moving this forward?
The biggest obstacle we face is the balance between collective and individual needs. That's my personal take on it at the highest of levels. The balance is that people have individual needs to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be appreciated, to be, to grow their brand or their business or whatever it is, right? And this is why individuals come to masterminds, and they have those individual needs. And this mastermind particularly isn't just about the individual, it's about building a collective flag. And so building a collective flag requires us to serve a higher purpose and participate in something that's bigger than ourselves. Yeah. That is really challenging because we're not really used to doing that. Or what we're used to doing is kind of operating our own businesses. It doesn't mean that we're not used to working in teams or doing stuff of that nature, but freedom culture as a flag, right, is a flag that represents multiple brands, multiple organizations, multiple individuals, with a shared set of common beliefs and values, which, to be honest, we're still landing. I mean, for example, it was a narrative discussion around, what this is even called. I call it a mastermind, but the I Am team and Light Leadership and them wanted to kind of change the narrative and didn't want to call it a mastermind. Yeah. And so isn't that it's really difficult.
The rhetoric, the languaging, that's huge, right? Because our universe, our world is through language. Right? We understand through language. And so the wording, the specifics of the words that we use make a big difference in our understanding, right? Even one of the things that emerged, one of the biggest challenges I feel of the mastermind was, well, if we're creating freedom culture, freedom to me means something different than freedom to you. And so how do we bridge that? How do we coexist if our understandings of what we're even creating is not just different, but potentially in contrast?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the point of the experiment.
Yeah. That's
the whole thing. This mastermind is an experiment. And in that experiment, we get to play with the different variations of what is possible. Yeah. And I've personally been experimenting in this for 7 years. I mean, Valhalla was the first sandbox. Superhero Academy is the second. And now freedom culture is kind of the third. I mean, it's all part of the same force, though. Yeah. From my perspective, it's all been part of the same energy, the same experiments that have been going on over and over and over again. The difference is we're just getting better at it. Yeah. At least I am, personally. And it feels like we're, as a collective, understanding more and more of this need. And I believe that need will actually grow when we are in more of a dire situation. Right now, the economy is okay, but I actually believe that if we enter another crisis globally from an economic perspective, this kind of culture These kinds of communities are what bond people together. They actually create tons of strength for the entire community, and therefore for the individual. So I think that there's something to be said about what we are creating as a community, and there's something really beautiful about that.
Yeah, something that we were just chatting about specifically with Kevin Oros and Adam Roa was the foundational principle of the universe being the expansion, the contraction, the anabolic, catabolic, the breakdown to cause and catalyze the breakthrough. And so these are these inevitable forces in nature because we do live in this three-dimensional, dualistic, binary polarity type of environment. And so it normally, it has been that through these challenges, through the contractions, through the breakdowns is what allows for that phoenix burning and reemergence to happen. And so what comes from
Hence
that
logo behind you.
Oh, yeah.
The bird emerges.
The bird emerges.
The light takes over the darkness.
Exactly. And so it is through these forces that these decentralized forces, right, the breakdown, like to then re-centralize and come together and unify. And that's what we're experiencing. In my perspective is that we're at the edge of, we're turning a corner and coming together. And right now we're in the process of co-creating the reality, and that comes down to all of the agreements and the structures and the systems and the way that we speak into existence what we are creating, and getting into a shared reality where there is coherence, and it's not just all of the individuals coming together to create this flag. It's a group within a group within a group within a group.
Well,
right? Speaking
speaking of shared reality, I mean, like the fact that you even said those exact words, that we get into a shared reality with coherence, is in and of itself the shared reality.
Yeah.
Because I would have never said those words had I not met all the people at Light Leadership, for example.
And Aloka specifically, right? One of the co-creators, like the fact that he brought forth that word, and that's the embodiment. The word shared reality is the embodiment of what we're creating. And so it's how we can influence one another. And once we agree upon something like, ooh, that's a great way to explain it, then we align through that languaging, which carries an energetic, is which we put forward, and then we influence others. And if it lands with them and if it resonates with them, because like attracts like when it comes to frequency and energetics, then we come together. And so it's been a really interesting process bringing people together, not, even just physically getting everybody to the jungle on the boats and the planes and the buses and the shuttles and, oh God, and the hikes. And then bringing people together with that shared mission and vision, and then the challenge of like, how can we contribute to the collective need while also honoring our own needs, and where are the boundaries? Like, where do my rights end when the collectives begin, or where does the collectives end where mine begin? And we're really working through those really micro interactions and dynamics.
Yeah, working through it. That's the key. The challenge is like, what do you do? What do you keep doing? You know what I mean? Because like you and I are sitting here and we're like, I'm not sure I can do this again next year. I'm not sure that we should even do anything next year. And it's like, at the same time, there's a ton of people who are loving this. Like, we're getting so much value, who would love for us to do this again. And so, part of me wants to do it again. Part of me doesn't want to do it again. Well, today, I feel better than I've ever felt in Envision, in terms of like, I don't feel that tired. I don't feel like, I feel pretty good. I didn't party too hard. I feel like I went to bed super early.
Well, 1:32 is not super early, especially depending on what time you wake up.
It's super early for Saturday night at Envision.
Well, when closes on Sunday, I mean, it's
sure.
We get.
Saturday,
I understand.
Normally, I wouldn't party as hard on Sunday night.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Me neither. But I fully understand that. And again, something that I'm really working on in my life is ending binary consciousness, meaning like it's either this or that. So it's either we do it next year or we don't. And what would it look like to meet in the middle? So where I'm playing with in every respect of my life is, okay, if we do it next year, because it's very potent and people want this and I feel that the world needs this, I know that we agree upon that, how can we recognize that we are doing great and invite ourselves to do even better? So all of the little
I think we just need to get people involved earlier. Yeah,
get people involved, clarity of roles and earlier agreements, and, setting non-constrictive containers that are allowing for emergence and yet still somewhat defined. Because what we talked about, something that emerged was, there's freedom culture, which is that unifying consciousness. Then on the far left potentially would be just freedom, and on the far right would be just culture. And in my perspective, full freedom, like no structure, no rules, no nothing, is anarchy. And I do not feel that's effective in our society. And then culture can often be way too constraining and constricting, which I also don't feel is so effective for our evolution. And so how can we come into that balance, creating systems and structures that allow for us to really be free and seeing the freedom in the structure?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree that there is freedom in structure, personally. And there is, because at the end of the day, here's why. Because at the end of the day, we're the people who set the structure.
Yeah.
So if the structure isn't working, you can just change the structure.
Yeah.
And inherently, that is therefore freedom that enables structure.
Yeah,
it creates
absolutely.
some level of anarchy. Doesn't mean that everyone does everything they want at all times. You know what I mean? Like, if just because somebody was sitting in the crowd and wants to go up on stage and yell into the mic while Closy's doing her set, like, that doesn't mean that that's okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are structures, there's common ground upon which all of us agree that maybe something going up and yelling into the mic is probably not the best thing.
Yeah, and that would be anarchy.
Yes. Now, there's, in total anarchy, this doesn't happen. Envision doesn't exist.
Right.
And in total structure, nor does it exist either.
Right.
So it's the delicate balance between those two things that is very difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
Can it be done? Yes.
Yeah. And something else that I see, with Envision being a perfect example, and a lot of communities, because, you've been spending the last 8 years building communities, and I spent the last 8 years traveling to communities and really observing and seeing and testing and playing and really witnessing what works and what doesn't. And what I find, as same as in organizations or co-ops especially, is that when there isn't a hierarchy, right, when each individual is just like, or each team is in control and empowered in their own position and own role, but there isn't a hierarchy or a main control center, someone that's like overseeing the whole thing and unifying it, it falls apart because they see like, oh, well, we thought you were going to do this, or we thought you were going to do that. And then there's no interconnectedness.
There needs to be some responsibility.
Synapses, like the brain, right? Like all of the parts of the brain operate on its own and they're connected.
Well, they're all connected to the brain.
Exactly. So how can we have, the brain is all of the different connections, but how can we have, a hierarchy in a way, but where each group is empowered in doing their own role, where they don't feel like they're being micromanaged or that they're being disempowered.
Well, it's not even micromanaged, it's being communicative. That's the difference, right? Like when IAM says I want to play a game, it's like, cool, and there's all these other people who want to do these things. So if you communicate what your needs are and we communicate what these needs are, then we find a shared reality based on the overlap. But somebody needs to be the access point upon which all of those different things are being decided.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, to make something happen, you have to make a decision. And so the question becomes, who, either as a group or as an individual, makes those decisions?
I will.
I mean, you made a lot of them.
I
did. You didn't make all of the decisions.
No,
I made a lot of the decisions
too. Of course,
too.
I was just joking about that. But what I would do differently is to have like one representative from each of the groups meeting way before to have that macro vision of like, okay, what is it that we are creating? What is this container and the different pillars and the structure? And then how can we allow what needs to emerge through that container, but having more coherence in the original planning, because a lot of these things were planned super last minute and it was a little bit chaotic.
But we had been having these conversations forever. Like in reality, we did have the conversations about what is coherent, what are the different things, blah 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 blah. But it happens over and over and over and over again over time, and then new people come in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, IAM was coming in, and like leadership was coming in, and all the things are coming in.
Yeah.
So those things change and they evolve, and the chaos will always be. I would believe that in creating a shared reality of all times, until the moment it happens, it will be chaos. It's organized chaos.
Yeah, considering it chaos is a perspective. Like it can definitely be complicated. It doesn't need to be totally chaos.
I mean, I say chaos in the sense that it will always be an emergence. There's no amount of conversation that you can have to have shared reality until shared reality is literally lived. What I mean by that is the now moment that you are talking about in the future actually comes to pass.
And then there's still setting an intention for people to come together to get into a shared reality.
Sure.
Creating a context, like the meta shared reality around creating shared reality. You know, like that House of Mirrors.
Well, I mean, and that's a difficult thing to do. I mean, how do you have that conversation from the perspective of wanting to create shared reality?
Yeah.
Knowing that shared reality also changes. Like what I say 4 months ago is different than what I say.
Totally.
like now, you know what I mean? Like it not materially different all the time. I mean, I'm pretty consistent, and so are most people. But new things emerge, new things change, and so it's maintaining those shared realities, quote unquote, but understanding that they're constantly emerging, that they're constantly happening. That is difficult, and merging that with financial reality is a whole other story. Because I could talk all day about the dream that I have of like, well, I want to host this whole event and I want to be free for everyone. Great, love that. And it's really difficult because, you know, we have to pay the bills. We have to do the things. There's things that need to happen. And those agreements, every micro agreement of what needs to happen has to be discussed. Has to be discussed by somebody and someone or some group that makes that, again, some level of existence.
Totally. There's so many different dynamics, right? There's the financial dynamic, there's the location dynamic, there's the group dynamic, there's also each interpersonal dynamic, right? Like, you know, we're being triggered, we're in different situations. Some people feel like they're not being heard enough or seen enough, or they want to connect deeper. They came for a specific reason, and there's expectations, and then even within, you know, myself and you, or you and Garrett, or me and Garrett, and like, it's so interesting putting ourselves into these containers and situations where we are being tested and pushed to expand and to level up in literally every single sense.
And that's where coherence really is, though, because coherence is built over time. You know, like the Light Leadership crew is fairly coherent because they're constantly hanging out. They're constantly having the conversation. You, me, and Garrett are pretty coherent. You and me are little fireballs, but me and Garrett are very coherent. You and Garrett are very coherent. So the reality of building that comes with proximity. It comes with engaged proximity and the continued sharing of thoughts and a soundboard of thoughts. Now, what we need to do is build a system. Like, to me, what's next is building a common bulletin board. In the same way that a church has church every Sunday, it also has the common bulletin board in which the calendar is, in which the methods of operation are, in which the standardized cultures are. And it doesn't mean, again, that the cultures don't change or they don't have flexibility. But what it does mean is that there's a common place upon which we learn about the changes that are unfolding and evolving in the first place.
I agree fully. I feel that, you know, although the dogmatic nature of the church isn't the most effective in our current time, I do feel that the structures are the most effective. So having churches or clubhouses, having shared ethos, having agreements like the Bible or the story and the narratives like that, having rituals like every Sunday, having song and dance and whatnot, like these are the fabrics and the fibers that really hold people together. And so in my perspective, that's really truly what comes next is, having the bulletin boards, having the clubhouses, having that shared vision, really anchoring into the why and the what, and then letting the how be emergent.
Yes.
And what I'll say
and when how is emergent, you also get this scenario where it's like everything's emergent and then the shared responsibility gets dropped and it always falls to the people who care the most. And then that's where like the Garretts of the world show up and it's like, oh, these people showed up and they don't have tents. And it's like, oh, fuck. And then
that's just the Garretts of the world.
Wow. It's the Garretts of the world. I said the Garretts, plural. There are others like you, like me, that take on that responsibility. So when the how's emergent, it's like really challenging.
But that comes from really like freedom culture is something that we are all co-creating, and you, myself, and Garrett are leading it. There's
short term,
yeah, we are leading it, and with like that would be for me the nucleus, the proton, the neutron, the electron, and then the outer circle, the first valence ring would be Aloka and David, and then we have the other core teams, and there's nothing wrong with that, in having that. I actually feel it is our responsibility as the money's coming through us, as the plans are coming through us, as we are the liaisons to all of the different components, that when something is dropped, we do step up to pick it up. And as a leader,
otherwise,
I feel that makes sense, and that's a role that we don't have to take, but there's no other role that I would choose.
Or else it disintegrates.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. If we want this to run, then we get to take this role.
Yeah. I how do I feel about all of this? I mean, here's what I'll say. I don't know. Sometimes I feel a little conflicted because I feel like I've already built this. You know what I mean? I've built it through Valhalla, and then it's like, oh, well, that's like, it's shared, but it's not shared. And it's like super grounded in Montreal. That's the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's like the second piece, which is like Superhero Academy, and that's another shared conversation. And that's like That one's really potent. That one's really close to like emerging into full structure. You know what I mean? And I've spent a lot of time building that structure, so as others to now are coming in and supporting, and the systems are in place. And then there's the element of like freedom culture, and what does that look like? And then, you know, the shared ethos behind that, and who's keeping the drumbeat going, quite literally. Now, we're all keeping the drumbeat going because we're talking about the shared story, but who's keeping like the physical architecture of it going? You know what I mean? And that's a great conversation I had with Peter, for example, who said, hey, I'll come in and bring some resource to the table. You'll still need to put the time, but at least to bring the resource.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that. I'm happier to spend the time.
Yeah. And
because I really want it to be infused with like some of the wisdom that I know I can bring to it.
Totally. And I feel that when you claim that, yeah, you are leading this, and that you are holding the central integral pillar.
Yeah.
You are the person holding the flag.
Oh, inherently.
And we're all supporting that, and we're all
holding it. Yeah. We're all holding it, but I get that I'm holding the like one key that is like inherently that if I stopped holding it, it would collapse at this moment.
Yeah.
Maybe not long term, but at this moment it would collapse.
In the way that it is, yeah, for sure.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, like people keep asking me, like, what are you going to do with these podcasts? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know. I know that it had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, should freedom culture be built as a brand? Or like a brand meaning like should have a social profile and all that stuff? What do you think?
My first reaction is no.
Mm-hmm.
Because once it's encapsulated into a brand, it feels a little bit more limiting. I kind of like the elusiveness. I kind of like the mystery of like what is freedom culture. It's like, yeah, you know, it's something that we can all talk about, we can share about, we can reference into podcasts, we can hashtag about, and yet to stick it into a brand, I feel like it's more of a flag, not a brand. And I'm open to that not being true. I'm open to, I can flip as well and say it would be the greatest brand. Something that every person could prescribe to and create meaning for themselves.
I mean, I personally have so far chosen that it shouldn't be a brand.
That's what I would, you know, what I started 8 years ago was this brand called Real Life But Better. And that was something that a lot of people really liked because it wasn't anything specific. It was just what they derived from that. Like, I can't tell you what your Real Life But Better is. Only you know that, and you get to step into that. And yet when I went to create a brand around it, I'm like, well, what would the logo be? What are the colors? Like, putting a logo to it and putting colors to it and putting font to it limits it in my perspective. And so
it also expresses it. I mean, that's like saying making choice limits your other choices. Like, you know
inherently
what I mean?
It does.
I mean, it does, but at some point that's the point. Like, you know what I mean?
But my point was not to only make a choice. It was to have it be infinite potential. And so when something is infinite potential, choosing one thing to represent that, to me, felt limiting.
Infinite potential could also mean nothing, though.
Exactly. Well, it is. Nothing and everything is the same thing, in my perspective, which is what the universe is, in my perspective.
I mean...
There's a
I feel like that. Like, sure. I mean, I get it, and like that's just like a vague statement. It's like what is like, you know what I mean? It's like,
but there's so much truth in that.
Sure, what is, but I get that. Like, I could see the insight that it could create in the right moment, and functionally, what is means nothing. Like, there's no, and I guess it means everything.
Means everything, exactly. And that's where the philosophy of the universe, that really, what you just said, encapsulates in my mind the whole universe. The everythingness and the nothingness.
Yeah.
And it gets to be whatever we create and whatever we decide. And that's really what I love the most about freedom culture. It's, okay, we're building something called Freedom Culture. It's a mastermind, it's an event, it's an online community, and it's a movement. And it, first and foremost for me, it's inside myself. You know, this mind and this body of mine, it can be the most powerful and beautiful and potent vessel for creativity and expression and art and magic and beauty, or it can be a prison. And from the work that I've done for the past, 11 years working with people, oftentimes our bodies and our minds are prisons. And so what would it look like to create freedom culture within and really transmute the darkness into that light and be that white bird and emerge from that and share that with the world? Because that's really what Superhero Academy is, right? In inspiring, empowering each and every individual to share their unique gifts with the world.
It's the tangible, grounded version of what we're creating in that way.
Exactly.
It's like literally, that is the how.
And so within as without, and it needs to start with us first.
Sure. So with that said, biggest takeaway from Envision not Envision, this mastermind, Freedom Culture Mastermind this year. Biggest takeaway, biggest lesson.
Yeah. So the biggest lesson for me is that I take on a lot. In the same with you, I imagine, but I take on a lot. I do put myself into leadership roles because I do feel like that's naturally the role that I have and people put me there. I can handle a lot, and I have this program that I need to do it all. That if something needs to be done, I'm going to be the one to do it. If things fall apart, I'm going to be the one that has to pick it up. I'm going to be the one that cleans up the mess. And I see that in every aspect of my life. And what I realized is that I hadn't really delegated well in my businesses or in my personal life. And I tried to always do everything myself. And this is really amplifying that and has shown me where my next area of growth is. And that's to call in more support, build teams, empower my teams, trust my teams, give them the tools and the resources and the motivation, the inspiration, and the ability to really help me, because I need that. And that's the only way that I will take my personal evolution as well as my professional evolution as well as this mastermind to the next level.
So that's the lesson.
Yeah.
And your takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is that there's nothing that has brought me more pleasure than you and I uniting and creating from this energetic, where I feel so bonded to you and inspired by our love. And that has enabled me to really show up in a different way and to connect at such a different level and to really be present and to feel good, like to really reclaim my power with the support and the security and the safety of our relationship.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. What about you? What has been? What's one thing that has really inspired you
in this mastermind?
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite part of the mastermind right now is that Kevin's roast, really. When he roasted everyone, including me, and the whole thing, that was definitely like one of my highlights for sure. What's inspiring me is like the quality and the level of people that are coming here. What's inspiring me is when I show up in the camp and there's a ton of people just enjoying the vibe, the space, the energetics of this space.
Yeah.
What's inspiring me is that like we have no programming technically after 5 yesterday, and yet there was stuff going on our stage until midnight.
Yeah.
Like pretty scheduled, like just emergent schedule. Like, hey, can I come at 6? Great. Okay, cool. Can I do this and this? And I just like keep saying yes, and somehow it just like works out. You know what I mean? And like I'm saying yes with like an informed yes, but it keeps like working itself out.
Yeah.
So I'm inspired by the wisdom of like how things just like naturally find order within chaos.
Yeah. Everything is always working out. Like I love that affirmation, that motto.
Yeah. I don't always feel that way, but
yeah,
it's definitely working out.
Looking back, right? When we look back, like sometimes we can get so caught up in the drudgery of just like the endless things that we have to do and we get to do, and the struggles and the challenges and the chaos. And then, but when we look back, we're like, wow, I've always been okay. And everything has always worked out, and everything is always working out. And if we can learn from that lesson of right now in this moment, how can we carry that forward, trusting that through the next bout of chaos or through the next breakdown or through the next emergent unknown, how can we just trust and remember that everything is always working out, and to really find that gold lining?
Yeah.
Another one of my favorites, I'll have to say, was getting to hang out with one of my first crushes, Gerard Butler. getting to like hang out and chill and just meet him and him telling me that I was a Glamazon warrior-esque princess. That was fun. And that being said, we just attract really epic humans. Like the caliber, not just Gerard Butler, from every single human that has showed up here and shared their gift, I've been inspired. That people are actually activated within their power and doing amazing work at being amazing in the world. Like really passionate, driven, dedicated human beings to positive impact.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome that we had a Spartan here.
The P.S. I love you, man.
Sure. I see him as a Spartan. You see him as a P.S. I love you, man. Says a lot.
And it gets to be both.
Yeah. With that said, I will end with the biggest lesson, which I still don't have an answer to. What was the biggest lesson that I learned? That the expectation around particular conversations or how any like element of curation is going to go is to be had, and to not allow a different shared narrative. Like essentially, the sales pages, let's say, if you want to call them that for marketing terms, the invite pages have to all be the same invite page. Everyone has to get the same invite page.
I fully agree.
That's my biggest lesson. To not bend and to trust next time that when I want to quit, that I should just keep going because it's going to work out. And that's back to the trusting that you said.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I really wanted to quit on this one.
Yeah.
Like really, I was really feeling like, fuck it, let's just fucking cancel this shit.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, it's because the main thing is because I feel like I'm holding the responsibility of the finances.
You are.
I know I am.
And you choose to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I choose to win if that's... What I say, the reason I choose to do it is because I believe that I choose to win in that scenario.
Yeah. You don't have to. Like, recognizing ownership over you.
If I didn't do it, someone
create
would.
Everything. We create all of it. And so anytime we have resentment or resistance, or if we're feeling overwhelmed, it's because we forgot that we are the ones creating all of this.
Sure.
And if it's not working or it feels ineffective, well, how can we bring in more harmony and ease, and what do we need? So really being aware of like, well, okay, what do I need in this moment?
With that said, what I need for you is to hit subscribe, to hit like, to comment, to let us know what you think, to let us know if you want to come. We're not sure we're going to invite you, but we want to know if you want to come anyway. Yeah, we'll consider it.
We'll appreciate your application.
Yeah, we'll accept applications. We don't accept everyone. That's part of the motto. I mean, look, there's only so many people we can bring. Like we hit capacity every time. And we push the limits of capacity realistically. Yeah. So we're always doing our best. But anybody who's listening to this, we love you. Thank you so much for anybody who came here and participated and made this happen alongside us as well. Much love and appreciation. Any last words from you?
Nope, you said it. We love you.
Bye-bye.